morning, everyone. I'm Blaine. Welcome to the Place Your Trades Network. We're the network that focuses on trading daily options using CME Group event contracts to trade E-mini S&P, NASDAQ, Dow, Russell 2000, gold, silver, euro, crude oil, natty gas, and my favorite, copper. Today, we have a really exciting show for you with Alex from Traders Retreat. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Tradeovate, which has built a custom app dedicated to trading CME Group event contracts. This is what we're all using at Place Your Trades. We're giving away a trip to Las Vegas. One winner will join the PYT team at the Money Show on April 24th through 26th. All you have to do is go to placeyourtrades.com/Vegas. If somebody wants to put that in the chat, I would definitely appreciate it. And sign up before March 1st. So today is February 28th. March 1st is Wednesday. So today's Tuesday, March 1st, tomorrow, Wednesday. So you really need to get on this Vegas trip if you want to enter. The time is drawing near. And speaking of drawing, Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I will be hosting a special show with Julia Cordova and Pax, where I will be spinning a wheel to pick the winner of the Vegas giveaway. Now, please remember that you can either win a trip to Vegas or you can win $1,000. So if you're like, there's no way I can leave my job to go to Vegas, well, who couldn't use $1,000? So go to placeyourtrades.com/Vegas and enter. Just really kind of your last chance. On that show, everybody on our email list will be entered to win a pair of Beats headphones. Now, if I could just take a second and do a promo for these bad boys. These have changed my life, legitimately. I wear them to the gym. I wear them on my walks. I wear them around the house. You know, AirPods or whatever they're called. I never know. iPods. I never know exactly what they're called. Hurt my ears. They hurt my jaw. I'm always know they're in my ear and they're always uncomfortable. These just sit right on. The sound is amazing and you can talk. I can have all my conversations. If Anthony calls me and needs to chat with me, boom, on go the Beats. So everyone on our email list will be entered to win a pair of Beats, and we will do a little contest during the show to pick a winner, and we'll give away one pair of Beats headphones. The caveat to both of these giveaways is that you must be live in the chat during the show, 4 o'clock Wednesday, to win either the trip to Vegas or the Beats headphones. And now, without further ado, Alex.
How's it going?
How'd you like that sales pitch? It was kind of impromptu, but I tried my best.
Honestly, it's interesting. I had heard it on, I guess, your last show. I forget who the guest was, but it sounds like a good deal, honestly.
Totally.
Everybody should probably at least enter to win, right?
I mean, as my dad always said when we would go to Vegas, you can't win if you don't play.
That's right. Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, it's always nice to see giveaways. I probably wouldn't be going to Vegas because I have 3 kids. So, take the cash, right?
Sure. You've got 3 kids. You take that $1,000. I mean, that's a whole new wardrobe. New sneakers, new tennis rackets, whatever you need.
Absolutely. That's right.
Absolutely. So this show is called The Intermediate Trader, and we really focus on traders who have been trading, 2.5 years and have kind of gotten over the whole concept of like what EMAs are, what time frames are, what different candles are, and sort of move on to a place where they can be more consistently profitable. And I wanted to know from you what that concept means to you personally.
One of the biggest things that has helped me out, and I don't know, I guess maybe because I was lucky to be pointed this direction in the beginning, but there was still obviously a hump, is truly understanding risk to reward, understanding like what you're putting up and what the risks are and how that affects, your account, and it affects your strategy as well. So I would say that, one of the biggest hurdles I see people struggle with besides learning the technicals, just kind of getting focused on the charts. I do think putting in time on the charts is huge. The candles are telling us a story, and that's one of the big things that I talk about. And you want to learn to read the language of the charts, which is why I focus a lot on supply and demand. That is what the charts are showing us, right? Buyers and sellers based on a time interval. And if you can learn to kind of read that language, almost like hieroglyphs, I can't even speak.
Hieroglyphics.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Maybe.
I don't know. But if you can kind of decipher it, and the only way to really do that is to spend time with the charts, right? As you do that, I think what a lot of people miss though in this process, and again with the hype of options, obviously, whether you trade and I trade a lot of options. I do trade commons as well, shares. It's definitely a safer bet a lot of times. But I trade futures. I push futures for a lot of folks that are struggling with options. But the key to that, of course, is that you structure your trade and set up a stop loss, right? And understanding like how you can create an edge through the trade structure. That's one of the biggest hurdles, I guess. I learned it earlier on because it was pushed by the guy that kind of taught me how to trade. Risk management was huge, and it's harder when you get into options, right? Because you have all the factors that make them so lucrative and profitable can also work obviously against you. You have theta, IV crush, obviously a lot going on there with options contracts. So
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, when you're looking at a chart, how do you remove your own personal bias from what you're seeing?
yeah, so that is definitely one of the harder things. I think two things. One is personality. I've done just from my life experiences, I've had a lot of experience understanding kind of how ego plays a big part in our lives. And it's not just trading, but it definitely falls into that category. And a lot of people think ego is just like a boisterous, outspoken person, but it's not just that, right? Like subtle people can still have ego issues and be driven by their ego, I guess. I always recommend, obviously, Mark Douglas, Trading in the Zone is a good site, a lot of books. As far as specifically on the charts, I basically use two different types of zones, right? And I can show you these at some point if you want. I look at the 4 hour and I just find areas of interaction where price has moved in or out of an area basically of consolidation, right? Although you can get a little more specific than that. That's one level that I've used for a long time. That's kind of what was taught to me in the beginning. The issue with that is if you do any day trading like I do now, the market drove me in that direction, second half of 2021 and then definitely last year. I found that swing trades just weren't working in my favor, and I just wasn't on the right side of the trade half the time, and I'd wake up red. But one of the other factors that works well is our supply and demand zones, and I find them based off of the candles on the chart, right? And you can see I use the bodies of the candles. Doesn't matter what time frame. You just have to know that you get a signal from that same time frame having a candle close above your levels. So literally using the charts to build structures, zones I call them, but whatever, right? They're levels. I like it more than just using like support and resistance because most of the time price is it's going to hover inside of a certain an area, right, between two levels. So if I can identify through looking at candle structure, right, and which candle's kind of in control, if I can identify, this is where the supply is going to be, then I can kind of get a signal, right? If we test that zone and then we close, let's say we're looking at an hourly chart, right? So I find an hourly supply zone, say that it's an hourly supply, it just means that it's on the hourly time frame. If I can see that price has gone up and tested that area and then pulls back and closes a candle underneath that lower part of the zone, that gives me a signal, right? And now I can structure my trade around that. But that's how I effectively take myself out of the trade, right? Or out of, kind of my emotional side out of the trading. I literally find areas on the chart, and then when we test them and I get a signal from a candle, and you can do this down on the, I use the 5 minute quite a bit. The higher time frames tend to carry more weight, but you do have to wait for that time frame to close, right? So hourly candles, you need to have an hourly close. There's a lot of daily zones that have been in play. And actually lately, like where we bounced off the top of ES was a weekly supply. We tested it, closed underneath, then we tested it again. And then, finally last week, we had the major rejection that pulled, that ended up closing the week pretty red. the thing with that is you have to wait for that candle to close to get that signal. So you really have to identify your time frame. But once you do, taking yourself out of the, I don't want to say out of the trade, but out of the, I guess the emotional side of like actually pulling the trigger, let the charts do that for you. That's been one of the biggest improvements, one of the biggest success factors in my career. So
I love that. Somebody, I wish I could remember who it was so I could give them credit, but somebody on Twitter yesterday said, if you're not trading a system, then you're trading only on intuition. And how is that possibly going to become consistently profitable? Which,
yeah,
just brilliant.
absolutely. And how do you back test that, right? How do
Exactly.
you project that into the future? I don't want to say it's impossible, but it would be very difficult to do. People talk a lot about edge, right? Like you need an edge. And I mean, yeah, there are, edge comes through experience. You can have the right type of training. But when it comes to like statistically looking at your trades, edge is really your risk to reward, right? What do you normally take and look for in trades, right? And when I say risk to reward, we're just talking about what's the distance to your stop loss compared to the distance to your profit target, right? And that alone, having a trade plan is more than what a lot of people when they start out do. Although I think once if you're going to do it consistently, you find that you have to have some sort of plan. So that risk to reward ratio, okay, which if it's done right, if you have a level set, you can say, hey, the charts are showing me that we've hit this zone, we've rejected. So now I'm waiting for price to go up and test that zone again. When it tests it, now I have an entry point, and I can set my stop based on maybe where previous price has gone. And normally I use the wicks, off of previous candles. You can kind of look at the structure to determine that, and then you look at where's it going to go, right? And normally on that same time frame, I'll look for a demand zone. That ratio is your risk to reward. So the way that I tend to do it, we get a consistent 2 to 4 risk to reward, right? So that's your reward is 4 times the distance. When you're talking about options, you do have to take into account that structures that edge, I should say, is based off of obviously the underlying chart's price movement. So you do have to account for the fact that you're going to be risking more if you take options contracts, depending on the expiration, of course. But that edge consistently calculated over time, it kind of changes your mentality to realize that even the losing trades are still part of your overall success, right? The ability to stop out at a set area and say, hey, look, the trade's going against me. I no longer like the entry here. Having that set or just being able to manually pull the trigger and saying, hey, I'm out of this trade, that gives you that is your edge. And I mean, consistently over time, you'll see, you kind of factor in like, okay, how many winning trades do I need to take if I have a 4 to 1 risk to reward, right? So
how long did it take you from beginning trading to sort of find your system and get really comfortable in it?
I mean, it definitely took the better part of 2 years, I think, to really solidify it. I mean, I'm always growing. I've been trading since going on 5 years anyways. So I was trading before the pandemic, although I got to be honest, like I was still in a lot of the learning phase, right? Going into 2020, I learned a ton. And, a lot of people just bought the bottom in 2020 and, or at least on the way up, just blindly bought it. And I didn't at first. I fought it on the way up. Had some really nice wins that helped my account grow. And I did a lot of fast learning, let's say, during that. So that first couple, I mean, I would say a couple of years realistically to get going. And I mean, that's pretty common, right? 2 years to really get under your feet. I will say though, that once I started trading full time, that was during the pandemic, or pretty much at the start of the pandemic. At the time, we only had one child. My daughter came home from school, and I realized that, hey, look, I need to be around. Somebody has to be home. My wife did work from home, but she literally, she's busy, throughout the day. So we had some help with that, but that forced me into focusing more on trading, and that's when things really kicked off for me. So
I have a personal question.
yeah.
I have 2 children. I found it hard. Well, I was just learning in the pandemic, but let's say now, like they have the day off of school tomorrow, and I know that I really shouldn't trade because there's no way I'm going to be 100% focused on the trade. They need the TV turned on. They need a snack. They need a water. How do you compartmentalize or sort of have the self-restraint to say, this is a day when it would be best if I didn't trade for personal reasons?
I think that's a good question because it is tough. And there's two things that I do normally when my kids are off. One is just take the day off, right, and just say I'm not trading. Sometimes my wife can watch. She's around. She does work from home still, and and then we can kind of, and her mother's around, so grandma can help out. So that it changes the aspect, I guess, a little bit. But if it's just on you, honestly, taking the day off is a lot less stress. It's more stress free. I will say that what I've done and what I do when I have things going on is I don't scalp. All the trades I take are based on, if not hourly levels, on 4 hour levels, right? Some of these bigger time frames. And I set up stops. I basically set a bracket, whether I'm trading options or commons. Maybe I'll trade commons that day instead. And so it's a different mentality than what I do when I go in and I trade. I'm on Spaces a lot and we do a ton of day trading, right? But on days that I know I'm not going to be around, I can think of another instance. I go fishing. I'm in Florida, right? So I've gone fishing a few times, and those are the days where, as much as I want to be in the market, I realize, hey, I'm not going to, I'm going to be busy. Now, sometimes I can trade, on the ride out because it takes a couple hours to get out there, but and I do that from my phone. But I got to be honest, just kind of setting the stage and just being like, I'm not going to trade today is probably the best bet for that. I don't know what your situation is.
I mean, my husband works in an office, so anytime the kids are up, anything the kids need, doctors being picked up from school, sports, it's just all on me. And sometimes I'm like, I really shouldn't trade today, but then I try to be present with my kids while trading, and I always have pretty red days those days because I'm just not fully focused on it.
Being able to keep track of your progress, right? It's okay to try to trade, and realize afterwards, say, hey, you know what, this just isn't working, right? Being able to analyze that, keeping a trade journal or a file of what your trades are. I mean, everybody should be doing that anyways, really from the beginning. But I know a lot of people in the very beginning don't necessarily they're kind of overwhelmed. But keeping track of your progress and then looking at it objectively, right? This is the key to a lot of issues, but around trading is people. There's a difference when you look at things subjectively or objectively, right? And it's like the best description I've ever heard is, subjectively is like you see the world through a pair of glasses. And what you don't realize that you have glasses on, right? And then one day you take off the glasses and you look at them and you can now see the filter that you've been looking at everything through. That's when you can become more objective. And it's really important to view ourself and our trades from that, right? So maybe, it's kind of removing that emotional attachment. And when you can look at things like what you're saying and basically say, hey, look, every time the kids are around, if I trade, the majority of the time I'm red. At the end of the day, is that benefiting your account? Doesn't sound like it. So you're better off just taking the day off and not worrying about if there's a big move. I had to pick my kids up from school on last Friday, and I was I run a Discord, and we stream on Zoom every day. I stream charts on there, and I was waiting for a bounce, right? And I got into the positions, but then I had to leave. So I ended up cutting them because it seemed uncertain. And of course we ripped up, it wasn't crazy huge, but it would have been nice with the calls, right? I trade a lot of SPX, 0 day and weekly calls. But, looking back, it's like, there's always going to be another trade. So you really want to remove yourself from that. But if you're keeping track of the records and it shows that, hey, most of the time that you do this, the majority of the time, it's keeping you, it's ending up being a negative for your account, then it's not worth doing.
Absolutely. And honestly, the only way you would know that is by keeping track. I know because it happens every time.
Yeah.
So the last question I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to a brand new trader?
First and foremost, find somebody who focuses on risk, who manages risk and can show managing risk, through examples or, that's what they're teaching. That is the number one thing, right? Understanding risk to reward. If you can minimize your risk, you can continue to learn as you go, right? We're all learning, but find somebody that that their baseline is to minimize your risk, because that will keep you from A, blowing up your account, but B, it also, in order to manage risk like that, you're already removing yourself emotionally, right? You're looking at it, from more of a statistical standpoint or mathematical standpoint. And that's really key. I mean, I know for a fact that a lot of the bigger, hyped up groups and spaces, not that they're not managing risk per se, but they don't chat about it a lot, right? So there's a lot of hype, a lot of FOMOing in, or kind of just saying, hey, look, I think this is going to pop, so I hop into it, and and people blow up their accounts constantly. So the other thing I would say to anybody that's new is give yourself time, keep it small, and practice. Like, first off is picking a broker, right? Find a brokerage. I'm not a fan of Robinhood. I was around when all that shit went down. And part of the reason is that you can't, if you're going to trade options, you want to be able to look at structure, right? Even if you're going to trade commons, you want to be able to use some of the tools that the better brokerage uses. As a secondary account, it's fine. I just wouldn't keep a lot of cash in there per se. The second thing would be then learn the brokerage, right? Paper trade on it. I have no issue with paper trading. Just know that to get fills on a paper account, it's always going to be easier than in real life. You don't get stopped out as much, but it's great, especially like something like futures, learning a new brokerage or a new software. Being able to kind of take your time with that and learn each step, right? There's a ton of great resources online that are free as well, even if you don't want to use a group. It depends on your level of entry. When I got started, honestly, a buddy of mine, I knew that he traded calls and puts. I didn't really know what they were. My view of the stock market was vastly different than what it is now. I didn't realize what day trading truly was, and the fact that you could do it with a smaller amount of cash. I figured you'd have to have at least 100K. You had to have just a whole different setup. And I think today, there's a lot more information out there, which is great. But just kind of put yourself aside and let yourself learn over the first year, I would say. So
I love it. Well, Alex, thank you so much for your time. And before you go, will you tell everyone where to find you?
yeah, so on Twitter, it's Traders Retreat. Twitter's going to be the best bet. I do have a YouTube channel that's also Traders Retreat. And you can look for the same bowl symbol that was on the beginning of the show. That's my logo pretty much across the board. I am on Instagram and TikTok. I don't post a lot on there right now, but probably will in the future. If you're interested in the zones or some of the way that I manage risk, some of the way that we find trades, the YouTube channel has a ton of stuff on it. Twitter is always a good spot. I try to post charts. I host spaces on Twitter as well. I just did one this morning, and I get a lot of comments and a lot of DMs from folks that appreciate that, because they're not, you want to take this seriously. This is your money, right? So treat it like a business, like you would start a business, and and go from there. So join us anytime. We are live normally a couple times a week.
Fantastic. I'll drop by and check you guys out.
Anytime. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great chatting with you, and
All right.
we'll do it again sometime.
All right. Bye.
All right. Take care.